It'll be fun. All right, so some updates. We have some upcoming events. We have put these on our website. You can RSVP on the website as well for these events, or you can find Carrie and she can help you RSVP. She made these really pretty. Aren't these pretty? She did such a good job. One of our most favorite events is the pumpkin patch. You bring your friends, bring your family, come eat some barbecue, get a pumpkin. Hopefully the weather will be good. It's at Hoffman Farms. It's beautiful out there if you haven't been there. October 22nd, Medicare next week. So for those of you thinking about Medicare, already on Medicare, we're going to be talking about things that are changing for 2024. We're going to be talking about, why it's important to enroll on time, the income-related adjustment. Yes, if you make too much money, your Medicare premiums go up. That's not fun, but we can plan for it. So come to that if you are on Medicare, preparing for Medicare. And then save the date for holiday pictures. I don't know how many of you send out holiday cards, but I sure do. And they're my favorite things that come in the mail. So if you want a nice photo for your holiday cards, we are having a photographer come in and you can come have a nice photo done. And guess what? Pets are welcome. Yes, pets are welcome. Bring your pets. All right, so RSVP for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. Thank you, Carrie, wherever you went for doing this for us. All right, I'm going to jump into some changes for retirees. So, required minimum distributions. This is having to take money out of your IRAs. This is how the IRS gets their tax dollars, right? You worked many, many years. You built up these retirement funds. You got a break in taxes for doing it, and now the IRS wants their taxes. Now, it used to be that you had these required minimum distributions starting at 70 and a half. Now it's 72 and it's moving to 75 based on your birth date. So what this means to you is you have more time to do some planning, Roth conversions, talking about preparing for the required minimum distributions. If you were born between 51 and 59, your required minimum distribution age is 73. Okay, after 1960, if you were born after that, it's 75. So we just want to put this out there. Do some planning with your advisor to prepare for this and see if there's any strategy that you can employ. How many of you have ever missed a required minimum distribution? It's not very fun. You get penalized 50% if you do it. Yeah. They are lowering it to 25%. So it's a little bit better news. Still painful. We here at FIT make sure that you take your required minimum distributions on time and in a timely manner before December 31st. Tammy's the one calling you to make sure you do that. But if you have outside accounts, just make sure you're keeping an eye on this, because if you do miss it, you get a big penalty. But it is going down to 25%, so that's good news. We're living longer, we're working longer. Now we can keep contributing to our IRAs. Used to be you turn 70 and a half, you no longer can contribute even if you're working and you have earned income. Well, now they have taken this away so that you can now contribute to IRAs, Roth IRAs, no matter your age, as long as you have earned income. So this could be a good strategy for those of you who might be doing some consulting, some part-time work. Talk to your advisor. Qualified charitable distributions. It still shocks me how many people don't take advantage of this. If you have charitable inclinations, so you give to a charity, you give to your church, you can actually have those funds come directly from your IRA and avoid taxes. So if you're not doing this, talk to your advisor about how to do it. You have to be really careful about how you do it. It has to come directly from your IRA and go directly to the charity. It can't go to you and then the charity for it to count, but you can avoid taxes. So if you're one of those people who's starting to have required minimum distributions and you really don't need them, this might be a good option for you to avoid some taxes. We all love avoiding taxes. This is really just a reminder, talk to your advisor, talk about strategy, put this in the back of your mind. And then really quickly, inherited IRA changes. Some of you may know this already, but we've had the death of the stretch IRA. What does that mean? It means if you leave an IRA to a beneficiary who is not one of these exceptions, so a spouse, someone who's disabled, chronically ill, or a minor child, then the person that you leave your IRA to has to deplete it within 10 years. This can be a big problem if you're leaving it to a child who has higher income. Now they're having to take these distributions and increase their income and thus their taxes. You can do planning, estate planning. You can do some planning with your advisor talking about, should we be doing some Roth conversions to reduce our large IRA or 401k dollars to prepare for this. This changed, I want to say it was January 2020, so it's been out there for a little bit. This is more of just a reminder, come see us. This is what we're here for. We want to be your resource. We want to help you strategize. We want to help your money grow. We want to help you reduce taxes. So come see us. I'm going to pass the baton to Christine.
Great. Thank you, Rachel. Very good information. And I am actually going to move over here so it's easier for Tammy to get the camera rolling as we are trying to record this for some of the clients who couldn't make it tonight. So Rachel described a lot of great changes for our retirees who are in the room. What I'm going to cover today has to do with some of our younger clients who are still working. So people who are contributing to their 401ks, or perhaps you have a 403b if you're either a healthcare worker or a teacher. 403b and 401k, one and the same. The IRS just likes to call it different things because of taxes. So what is going to be a big change upcoming? One of the biggest changes that they're making to employer plans is the catch-up. So as many of you guys know, for those of you who are over the age of 50, the IRS actually allows you to put more dollars into your 401k. It's called a catch-up because they're saying, you're getting old. Let's try to help catch you up with retirement. So for 2023, the dollar amount was $7,500 as a catch-up, in addition to the $22,500 that you can put in. So that was for people over the age of 50. Now, what they're going to be doing is automatically adjusting that catch-up amount according to inflation. So as you all know, inflation has been off the charts. And this is actually going to be a really great thing because as long as inflation keeps pace at a high rate, you're going to be able to catch up and put more into the 401ks. That's great news. Another change that's upcoming, they talked about this for 2024, but what they found out was it's going to be a little bit hard to implement within the next year, which is for employees who make over $145,000 annually, that's a salary amount, all catch-ups that are being put into the plan must go into what we call a Roth 401k. So what is a Roth? A Roth is very similar to your traditional IRA, except that's going to be all after-tax dollars. And when you take it out later on in retirement, tax-free income. So that's a really big change that is likely going to take place, estimated around 2026, if employer plans can catch up with that and actually offer that option to their employees. Now, here's a really big change that's coming up in 2025. You'll see that I highlighted for those who were turning 60 in 2025, so that's in about 2 years, they're going to allow those people to contribute and catch up to $10,000 adjusted for inflation. So this is going to be the golden time for you to put even more dollars into retirement, and it's only going to last between 60 and 63. So absolutely talk to your advisor about this if you want to shuffle more dollars into that pre-tax plan, because that's really going to help buffer and shelter more of your income into the 401k. No changes are going to be made, so unfortunately, you still have to be over 50 to get the catch-up. They're not going to be changing that anytime soon. The next thing that I wanted to cover could pertain to some of our parents in the room and or grandparents who have education savings plans for their grandkids. So as you know, 529s are a great savings vehicle for education. Now, before I jump to that, one big change is a lot of people come to me and they say, hey, Christine, should I be contributing to my retirement account or should I be paying off my student loans? Because I'm a doctor now and I have $400,000 in student loan debt. Which one do I do? Good news for you, you can do both. And this is how it's going to work. If you are paying towards your student loans, and this has to be a qualifying employer, what they can do for you is the amount that you're putting towards student loans, they're depositing into your 401k on your behalf. This is huge, right? This is going to help a lot of our graduate students, doctorate students really get a head start on their 401k savings because you all know compounding is the greatest benefit in these retirement accounts. So they're going to be rolling that out. Employers will have to qualify in order to do that. You're going to have to prove something like show them a statement of what student loan payment you're making in order to get that match. But talk to your grandkids, talk to your kids that this is going to be a huge change to really, really start them young in retirement savings. The next big change. As I mentioned, 529s are a wonderful vehicle for education savings. Why? Because the dollars that you put into a 529 can be invested. All the growth is tax-free. When you take those funds out to pay for qualified education expenses, also tax-free. So it's almost like a Roth IRA, but for education savings. And with the inflation and how expensive school is costing nowadays, it's going to be a great bucket that you can pull from within the 529. So what are the changes? They, starting in 2024, will allow, if you had leftover dollars inside of a 529, keep in mind, with leftover dollars, if you don't use it for paying for school, paying for books, you will then get taxed on the dollars that you take out. So I'm sorry, your grandchildren can't use those dollars to go buy themselves a Lamborghini. They're going to get taxed on that, in addition to capital gains. So if you find that there are leftover dollars in the 529, the IRS is actually allowing you to take up to $10,000 of that and apply that to student loans. Now, some of you may ask, well, why would I still have student loans left if the 529 is fully funded? Well, here's the caveat. You can actually transfer that 529 to anybody else within the family who might still have student loans, and they can take that $10,000 completely tax-free to pay for their student loan debts. This can apply to parents. So parents who still have student loans, this can apply to cousins. It's a very loose definition of what they're saying family is. So don't worry about having those funds left over because you can easily transfer that to another family member, help them pay off student loans, and maybe they give you the $10,000 in cash, right? The last update, which is huge, has to do with retirement savings adjustment. So when the Secure Act was signed in, a lot of the focus was how can we help younger students start saving for retirement earlier? Because one of the biggest crises is that young people just don't know. They don't know about 401ks. They don't know about Roth IRAs to get the head start. So parents can now roll over up to $35,000 out of the 529 that they've been funding for their kid into the Roth IRA, which again is a tax-free bucket for them later on, and all the growth in the Roth IRA, tax-free. What a wonderful rule for them to take advantage of to really jumpstart retirement savings for their kids. If you guys have additional questions around 529 education savings, come talk to your advisor. We can look through your plan and see what works best for you. Now, jumping back into retirement accounts. So If you were to pull funds out of your 401k or out of your IRA before you turn 59 and a half, the IRS slaps you on the wrist and they say, whoa, 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 you're too young to take the money out. We're going to penalize you 10%. Well, they decided to broaden some of the exceptions to allow penalty-free withdrawals out of your 401ks or your IRAs for any one of these reasons. Long-term care insurance has been a really big topic for many people because assisted living, memory care, all of that can cost over $80,000 per year, not even adjusted for inflation, right? So it's important that those who have been putting money into a 401k can utilize their funds early to perhaps pay for a long-term care insurance policy. So that's exactly what the Secure Act has changed. So now you can take up to $2,500 annually to pay your premium on a long-term care policy. You don't need to find the funds out of your savings or sell out of your investment accounts to do that. You can now do that out of your 401k, which is a huge benefit because that's just going to cost you more and more later on. And to have that long-term care insurance policy is going to help with that big cost that you're just not sure whether you're not going to use or not. The next big change, if you're having a baby or perhaps thinking about adoption, you can take up to $5,000 to help with those costs from your 401k as well. Some new provisions. So before the Secure Act, it was pretty narrow, the things that you can take penalty-free. It would be like if you died or if you had a disability. But now they've actually expanded it to also cover those who are terminally ill. So if you have a diagnosis that shows that you're going to be dying within the next 7 years, you can take funds out of your 401k without the 10% penalty, which is fair, right? Fly to France. Get that Lamborghini, just not for your grandkids. Use your money before you pass away. The other big one is victims of domestic abuse. So if you're trying to escape a situation where it's not very safe for you and you don't have the funds to do so, you can now pull out of your 401k to pay for some of those living expenses completely penalty-free. And lastly, for our public safety workers, so these are going to be your firemen, your paramedics. These folks can now withdraw funds from their 403bs because they work for hospitals, penalty-free before they turn 55. So for those who just don't want to serve as a firefighter anymore, or they're too stressed out because they're an EMT, they can choose early retirement without that penalty. So the Secure Act has really broadened a lot of things for your benefit and better plan for retirement. Again, come talk to Rachel or I. We can look at your specific situation and make sure that you are best planning for retirement and beyond. So thank you guys. Those are the financial planning updates that we have. Joe is going to come up and share more about the economic updates in terms of markets. So that's going to be the more exciting part of my
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stand at this podium if that's okay. I'm a little less dynamic than those two ladies, but. I'm at the age I should have got bifocals at the last bit because I'm constantly, I'm nearsighted, so I gotta see you at these on, but well, that knows this. That's where I'm at. So anyway. And big shoes to fill, although both of us, both Diana and I presented last year. Obviously Diana isn't here tonight, so my goal is to be at least half as interesting and entertaining as her, but hopefully you walk away with something more than what you came in with. So that's my goal anyway. So kind of an overview. We're going to start and end with kind of the bigger picture of what's going on with the economy. Can you guys hear me in the back? Everything's good? Okay. So we're going to talk about, interest rates and inflation, things like that. And that's kind of the bookends. And in between, I kind of want to get into my personal process and investment philosophy of selecting investment for your accounts. So macro or big picture, where are we at today? Well, technically we're still in a bull market, or it doesn't feel like it. the market reached its peak July 31st, and it was up about 20%. It's sold off about 7% since then in the last 2 months. So hasn't been a fun end of the summer. So that's kind of where we're at. Inflation is coming down, but things are still increasing in price. So although it's a better story, it's still, painful when we go to make certain purchases. Interest rates remain elevated for that very reason. The main tool that we have to bring inflation down is, of course, to raise interest rates by making everything more expensive to take out a loan, to buy a car, buy a house. That generally cools things down, and inflation comes down on a lag basis. With all that kind of doom and gloom, that does allow for, there are still opportunities in various sectors of stock market where bargains and reasonably priced investments in good companies do exist. Also, in many of your accounts, Diana and I have been investing in individual bonds that treasuries for the most part. Some corporates have a very good credit to kind of lock in a benefit of those good interest rates and tamp down on volatility within your accounts. So, second here. Okay, the path of inflation. I won't bore you too much. This just kind of shows where things have been increasing and decreasing over time in terms of a basket of goods, representative of what consumers buy on a monthly basis: bread, eggs, energy, milk, all that stuff. So in the peak right here, let's see here. You get my little pointer if this thing works. You guys see that up there? So here was the peak. This was in June of 2022. That was at 9% inflation, which was obviously well above what we've experienced this century, at least in any recent memory. So that was rather painful. It's come down to 3.7%. Now, the goal of the Fed and all the smart economists is to keep things around 2%, and that's generally indicative of a healthy economy. So we're still above that. So there's still work to be done. Inflation has become very entrenched, and it's been more stubborn than what anybody could have anticipated. Just to kind of give some color around, this eye chart of a graph, if you will. I did some calculations from January 2020, kind of right before we went into the whole COVID collective nightmare, up until the end of August, on some items. Bread for a loaf of average white bread nationally was $1.35. It's now $1.97. That's a 46% increase. Gallon of milk, $3.25 to $4.33. That's up by a third. A gallon of gas, which is subject to other market forces and political operations, if you will. Still, though, that's a good indicator of what we feel as consumers. A gallon of gas then was $2.57. It's now $4.74 on average. So that's 84% increase. So these are real impacts to Americans' lives. So, and one that just blew me out of my chair. This was just early this week, and I mentioned to Carrie this afternoon. I asked her to guess what the average American car payment is for a new car, and she guessed around $520. I said, close, but you're off by about $200, $736. So it was absolutely amazing. So, and we both just started talking about how do young families make it. Mortgage rates are at 23-year high. 7.5% is the average 30-year rate. And another one that, for young families that seems really painful is the cost of childcare is rising at twice the rate of inflation. So pretty scary. I don't know how young people do it. Some causes of the inflation that aren't just related to what coming out of COVID and the response with all of the stimulus. Globalization, in terms of markets being open to each other around the world, that has been kind of curtailing to some degree. We kind of maxed out on that, so it seems. Access to cheap energy seems to be leveling off as well. And a lot of those are tied into various geopolitical unrest. You have China and Ukraine. So those type of things are making everything expensive. And it's not necessarily just the supply chain and stimulus factors coming out of COVID. So unemployment, the goal is to be around 4%, inflation at 2%, unemployment around, call it 4 to 5%. So we're at 3.7%. So that puts a upward pressure on wages. makes everything expensive for all of us, as we just showed in the last slide. So contrary to what kind of the general mood is, with all the political things going on, the economy might be a tad too strong. And that's why you're hearing these interest rates hikes that are still happening. And we predict at least one more this year. And that could be the last, or there could be two more. We're not, no one knows. But this stuff has been very resistant to the efforts of the Fed. So currently it's an employer's market, an employee's market, and that's putting a lot of upward pressure on wages. I kind of think we're in the last throes of this. I think the economy is cooling. Everything is lagged, so inputs don't equal outputs. But I don't know if you've noticed, but there's been a lot of organized labor strikes going on in this country. United Auto Workers, Kaiser Permanente, largest healthcare strike in the history of this country, is occurring right now. And just recently, pharmacy workers at Good Sam, I believe, went on strike. So I think that they're sensing this is the kind of the last opportunity to put their voice heard for increased wages before kind of the tide kind of turns, if you will. So Fed and interest rates, this chart represents what the Fed thinks interest rates are going to be. And when I say interest rates, I mean the Fed fund rates. I'll leave the details out of it, but the federal fund rates is the rate that big banks charge each other to lend money overnight. What that basically means that is the baseline interest rate that everything builds upon. So mortgage rates, the Fed fund rates, they're looking at 2.5%, which was much higher than recent history. Will suggest. So 2.5%, that's in the long run, says right here. That indicates that we're probably going to be in an elevated interest rate regime for the medium term to long term. So that's what most prognostications are saying. So things are going to probably come down to some degree. It's 2.5%. So right now we're about 5.5% at that funds rate. So everything builds up on top of that. So that's why a mortgage rate is 7.5%. So it's a little more out in terms of yield relative to that base federal funds rate. So the kind of key of this chart is that that the days of easy credit and easy borrowing and all that are probably in the rearview mirror for the near to medium term. So this is of much more interest to me. The actual, that was more of the macro, the big picture of what's going on in the world. Well, when that colors what the lens that we see things through, but in terms of investment philosophy, we like to start at the bottom. And I'm cognizant of time here. Let me see. Okay. A little bit behind, so I'll speed it up to sum it. But this is just in a nutshell. This is what I believe in terms of investing things that I can understand, business models that are that are in my circle of competence. In a former life, I was an engineer, but I will say that AI and things like that are beyond my circle of understanding. Same with crypto. I've seen and we would never invest in crypto, so don't worry about that. But I've seen multiple presentations by people way smarter than me, and still I walk away very confused, and I think they're confused as well. So we won't invest in anything that we don't fully understand. We're looking for good companies at a reasonable price that have competitive advantages, or what Warren Buffett would call moats, that protect the castles that he invests in. So he wants something that's gonna, when times go bad, they have a moat around them that makes them special in some way, that will allow them to earn superior economics to the next competitor. We look for we are owners as equity holders. We are the owners of the company. So we want to align ourselves with management that thinks that same way. They are true stewards of the capital that we are entrusting them. We want them to be making good decisions on our behalf. In terms of a purchase price, we want a margin of safety. We want to buy dollars for 75 cents. Now those are hard to find, but they do occur. Markets are generally efficient, but we really there are opportunities out there to be had. And then of course long-term mindset. That's one of the only advantages that we as investors really have, is that long-term mindset to be able to invest in qualities that A, we understand, B, we believe in, and C, we will hold on to let those good economics benefit us across the long term. So this is my guy, Warren. A good quote there is about being a businessman and viewing investing through the lens of a businessman. In life, oftentimes I think, Elon Musk is fond of saying, and could get two more opposite guys than Elon Musk and Warren Buffett, both brilliant guys. But, Elon, he likes to, talk about first principles, where he looks at any problem and strips it down to its absolute bare essentials and goes from there. And, people think of stocks as like these things that go up and down on a ticker somewhere, but we look at them as slices of businesses that we are owning. So, take it down to the most simple business, a lemonade stand. You look at your expenses, your lemonade, or your lemons, your sugar, your water, your capital equipment in terms of a stand. And, at the end of the day, end of the summer, did the boy or girl running that, did the revenues exceed expenses? Are we getting something for an investment of our dollar? So, that's a very, simple example, but it's the logic applies to when investing in equities. We want to be owners, and we want to align ourselves with management that views it in the same way. So they're taking care of our money, and they're running things like a business, not a personal fiefdom or empire building or, acquiring all these things that don't make sense. So we look for common sense investments that kind of hit us over the head in terms of good economics. So these are some kind of quotes by Warren that I hold to pretty steadfastly. So. And one of my kind of more colorful ones that he uses is that in terms of investing, it's like we're in a endless baseball game with a bat on our shoulder that there's no strikes or balls called. We wait for that fat pitch to swing at. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of long time mindset. Not there, we don't want to confuse, and this is a John Wooden quote, we don't want to confuse activity with achievement. So trading and churning and all that. We don't have advantages in that. And for the most part, nobody does. So we're looking for that long-term mindset to be able to sleep at night with our investments. So I talked about moats earlier, about protecting our castles. These are kind of the sources of those moats of what would make a company attractive to us. Intangible assets, think of things like a patent with a high-tech firm, something that they have that nobody else has. That's going to protect you for a finite number of years. I think 17 is the number. All said and done, you might get 10 or 12 years out of a good patent. But another intangible asset that isn't as obvious is a brand like Coca-Cola. No one is going to be able to replace in the real estate of our minds around the world the value, the presence that Coca-Cola has collectively. That just will never be replicated. That I could see. So it's things like that, the intangible assets that, a competitor just can't compete with. Customer switching costs. Think of, like my cell phone. I have a Samsung phone, and my wife is an Apple person. My mother-in-law's an Apple person. We all live in the same house, and I do believe that Apple probably has a superior product, but I don't want to relearn a phone. I'm happy with my Samsung. It does everything I need. And, those switching costs would be painful for me. So those are Microsoft Office. That's another one. To learn, some competitor to Excel or Microsoft Word or any of those type of things is a huge, just a pain to learn. So those are switching costs. Network effects. That's when, the more people that use a product, the more valuable it gets. Again, Microsoft Office, the more people, everyone in business, at least in this country, uses Microsoft Office. So if you aren't, then you're kind of out in the cold. So the value of that product increases. Same thing, obvious networks like Facebook or Amazon, the more users, adds exponentially to the value of those companies. Low cost advantage. Think of huge companies like Walmart, Amazon, Southwest Airlines to some degree. These are companies that their advantage is that they can provide their product at a lower cost than anyone else. So that's typically proves the companies that are huge in nature and have been around quite some time. But it's going to be extremely prohibitive to try to overcome that advantage. And I talked about margin of safety. in terms of when purchasing price, we want to buy, dollars to 75 cents or less. So that's going to allow for things to go wrong, because things can go wrong temporarily. Usually when we're entering into an investment, we look at the history and the repeatability and the consistency of earnings, and hopefully an increase in those earnings over time. So we're looking at something that, if something is a little wrong on our end in terms of analysis, or there's something that just can't be seen that's going to happen, by paying a lower price, that's going to, absolve us of a lot of sins. So, I think of it as like if you, have a rental property and you get a great deal on it, in the first year, if a pipe bursts and your floors are ruined and you got to do something to repair it, you're going to be able to cover that with the savings. So that's what we look for in terms of a margin of safety. We don't want to overpay. Mr. Market, this is a symbolic kind of representation of the stock market, and he's it's a monopoly man, I believe, but he's coming and knocking at your door every day in the market, and you see it on MSNBC and all the business channels, Bloomberg, buy now, sell now. This is what it's doing, and he's coming knocking on your door and offering you that price, and it's up to us whether or not we want to take it. So that kind of ties into the whole baseball example, in terms of, the power that we have as investors is that long-term mindset and the ability to kind of, they call it assiduity, and that means to sit on our hands. So not that we're sitting on our hands, we're mindful of your money, but we don't believe in, making trades for the sake of trades. And then finally, kind of back to the big picture where we think things are going, interest rate hikes, I would definitely say there's one more likely. And perhaps that will be it. Could be two. I'm not sure. There's things outside of just our United States picture that are affecting things. China is offloading a lot of our debt, so that's lowering the price of our debt. And the Fed is actually reducing their balance sheet in terms of the bonds they hold. So that raises the interest rates themselves. So that's to be factored in as well. So it's going to be choppy this year, and we're hoping 2024 will be a little more stable. That's the view, but we do think that interest rates are going to be elevated for a while. The economy is still growing, about half of what it should, or not should, but has historically. So that's a good thing. The Fed is trying to thread the needle between inflation getting out of control and kind of killing the economy. And so far, with aplomb, they have done that. So we're still hoping for that soft landing in terms of a recession. That recession has been talked about for the last 2 or 3 years, hasn't been seen to date. But I think the chances of the soft landing are slightly reduced compared to the last time I spoke to you, any of you who were at the town hall meeting, I think back in May. So, but still, odds are that would be the outcome. So with that comes the reduced job gap, unemployment going up a little bit, but not too much, hopefully. So there's not much pain to the average American. Wage growth will be tailing off, and then, of course, inflation will be coming down. So that's kind of the big picture. So I think we have time. Let's see. Yeah, if we have a few minutes. If you guys have any questions for myself, Rachel, or Christine, I'm happy to try to answer them.